Welcome, everyone, to the third panel in our series today. I am Elaine Book, and I am a social worker in Vancouver, Canada. And I've been working in a movement disorders clinic there for about the past 18 years. A little bit of background as to why I'm really excited about being here today, in part because I have met and worked with the parents of our panelists today. So I'm just super excited to be now working with their kids. That's one reason for my excitement. The other reason is that I have this long-standing interest in the impact of Parkinson's disease in the family. As a social worker in the clinic, I was noticing, this is a number of years back, I was noticing more and more younger people with Parkinson's coming into our clinic. And no one, at least no one in my clinic anyhow, was really asking, how are the kids doing? Uh, and so I'm really happy to say that in the past 15 years, there's really been tremendous growth in this area with a lot more resources and books and support options available, and really a general greater awareness among healthcare professionals to kind of check in with the person with Parkinson's who's a parent and to check in on how the kids are doing. And so today we have the good fortune to have some of these kids here with us today to share their stories and their experiences of growing up with Parkinson's in the house. What we'll do is we're going to have each of our panelists speak, and then we'll have some time for some conversation, some discussion, and some questions. So we're going to start off today with Sarika. And I met her mom, excuse me, Sonia, at my very first WPC in Montreal in 2013. And I heard about her daughters at that time and at all my other meetings that I've bumped into Sonia. And now it's just such a joy to be connecting with her oldest daughter. And she's going to join us now and share a little bit about her story. So welcome, Sarika.
Thank you so much, Elaine. I'm very, very excited to be here. It's nice to meet you too, because my mom also talks about people from the Parkinson's world like all the time, and it's nice to put faces to names.
Fabulous. So I'll just turn it over to you to.
Sure, just talk a little bit about my experience. So I right now I'm 26. It's hard to say like, oh, I've had Parkinson's in my life since X age because I've had Parkinson's in my entire life. My mom was diagnosed when she was pregnant with me, her first child at 27. And so it's even before like we had a name for it in the house, there was definitely a presence of Parkinson's in the house because I mean, it's not something you can really hide at home. You can try and maybe hide it in your professional or social life, but you can't hide it all the time. So obviously she was not always trying to cover it up. Again, even if we didn't have a name for it. Um, I remember when when they sat us down and like told us the words for it. I think I was probably 9 or 10. I don't know the exact age. Something around then. And it's always a funny story for me that gets me a little bit riled up because in that moment, I obviously knew there was I knew that my mom had Parkinson's. Her and my dad had been doing a lot of charity work for many years around Parkinson's related charities. There was obviously something going on with my mom. I was not like completely unaware, but I wanted to be polite. And so like when my parents sat me down, I was like, I have no idea what we're sitting here for. Oh my, what are we learning about today? You have Parkinson's? And versus my sister who like said it right. My parents were like, what do you think we're talking? And my sister who was like a couple years younger than me just blurted out the words. And so my mom, who does a lot of speaking with Parkinson's, constantly on her talks tells that story and says, like, my oldest was completely unaware and had no idea. And I'm like, oh, I'm not completely unaware. I was being polite. I was having tact. But yeah, my mom and I are close to this day. Um, I think Parkinson's has always there's always been an attempt at making it an open dialogue in our house, which is I think the most important thing. I say attempt because it doesn't always work out as all things that people are navigating for the first time tend to run into. Um, yeah, I'm not sure what else I could say to introduce myself, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Thank you. I think one question that I would just ask you is just about your last comment and this intention to have an open dialogue, because what I often hear in my clinical work is, you know what, we don't want to concern the kids, we don't want to worry them, so we're just going to kind of keep this quiet as long as we can. And so I'm excuse me. So I'm just wondering if you're able to kind of speak to what does that open dialogue look like?
I think specifically what you said is so interesting to me that this is a pattern with parents because obviously I'm biased. Obviously I can't speak for every family and I can't speak for my mom's side of things. But when I say troubles with the open dialogue, and she's definitely going to see this at some point and get annoyed with me. But when I say troubles with the open dialogue, I mean from her side. I think it's interesting that you point out that many parents are like, how can we shield the kids? How can we keep this away from the kids? Because I think that's something I experienced with my mother. And I wasn't just my past and my childhood to this very day. She does her best to quote unquote shield how she's feeling. And that can be very frustrating on the other end because I can't ask my mom how she's feeling. I can't ask her that. I have to ask my dad. And my dad will be able to read the situation and be like, no, she's off right now. And my mom will be like, well, no, I said I wasn't off because I technically am not off. I technically was off an hour ago. And even though I'm not on, I'm technically not as off as before. So I wasn't lying to you. And I'm like,
I can see that whole conversation happen.
yeah, exactly. It's like that all the time. And so I think my plea to parents with Parkinson's who are trying to navigate that with their children um, is to just be open about that. And I know it's hard because parents want to be a soft place for their kids to land, right? They don't want to be a source of stress or strife in a child's life. And I completely understand that. But sometimes, and I want to be very clear, in my experience, my mother's Parkinson's has not been a source of stress or strife in my life. It's not affected my life in a negative way. I can't speak for everybody in that way, just my own experience. But sometimes the only stress that can come from it is like the clash of interpersonal dynamics that comes along with a parent trying to navigate Parkinson's on their own in their own lives and having to also balance that with being a parent. I empathize with the parents, I really do, but
And I think just to normalize that just any relationship between parent and child, regardless of the health condition being at play, has to navigate relationship and communication stuff. And the Parkinson's is just kind of another piece of that. So,
100%. I don't think
well,
it's a situation unique to Parkinson's.
yes, exactly. All right. Well, we're going to take you off this hot seat for a second, but we'll come back and just have a chance to introduce Lily and Pearl. So I was first introduced to the existence of Pearl and Lily also at WPC 2013 after watching their father's videos smaller, and I think we're going to get to see a little clip of that as well. And so it's really a pleasure to welcome both you, Lily and Pearl, to our panel. And I'll just turn it over to you guys right now.
Hi, I'm Pearl, I'm 16 and I'm in Auckland, New Zealand this morning. And I'm here with my older sister Lily. Our dad was diagnosed in 2009 when he was 44, so it's kind of all we've really known. But I'd say we grew up with a really good support system in terms of like, I always felt comfortable to talk to him about it. And my sister was like amazing at just like taking on extra roles to like make us feel like really included. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a journey, but I feel like it's given us lots of a very wide experience in life, and I think we've both gained a lot of maturity from it. Yeah, I'm sure we'll divulge into more things, but that's a little intro from me.
Hi, I'm Lily. I'm the older sister. Yeah, just as Pell was saying, Dad was diagnosed when I was like 3 and Pell had just been born. So it is kind of all we've ever really known. But she's completely right. Like, I think as much as Parkinson's can feel like it takes things away, I think it's gifted us so much in our family. Also really nice to be joined here with my little sister today because we have gone through it always together in tandem. And so that's kind of nice. Like she is my little support network. So I'm glad that we can both be here to talk to you guys today. And yeah, we'll get into more in a sec.
Just as you were mentioning, just a bit in terms of the value of support, right? Since Lily, you talked about having your sister as a support. Have there been other supports that have been really valuable to you as you've navigated life with your dad and Parkinson's?
Yeah, I mean, Pearl and I were talking, like it was really valuable. My dad has a really good, like closely connected network of people in the disabled community, who also had kids that were really nice for Pearl and I to lean on just to kind of talk and feel a little bit more familiar. And yeah, I think that those, especially as an older sibling, those little areas of support are really necessary because I did have to take on a bit more responsibility growing up. And so having like my mum to lean on and each other is just like it's really necessary. What do you think, pal?
Yeah, I definitely agree. We have like some really good family friends, someone who's my age as well. And I found it really like beneficial just to like not even talk to them about it, but just share a same like sense of like knowing that our parent has something different. But it was always really useful. And like I obviously talk to my sister the most out of anyone I know because she is my source of like relatability in this
Mhm.
term, and she's always been very good at it. We have quite a close bond, and it makes it easier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
certainly helpful. Now, if you guys had more that you had prepared that you want to say, let's just go with that right now, if that's okay.
Okay, perfect. Well, we just kind of wanted to like summarize a little bit of our experience because growing up with it from such a young age, I know that lots of parents will be interested because it's a very foreign idea due to like a normal upbringing or something like that. But we just really wanted to make it clear that this has always been our normal. It doesn't feel like this like big crazy thing that I've had missing out of my childhood. Like this has just been our lives. And our parents have kept a really open dialogue about it, like kind of, like along with what Sarika was saying. Um, and one thing that our dad did was he wrote the award-winning poem Smaller, to help kind of just explain what Parkinson's was in like this without the stigmatization around it. Just kind of break it down into simple terms for my little sister and I. And I know that I think that we were gonna play a little clip if that's all right.
Great.
Hello, my name is Lily McDowell,
We can't
and
hear
I want to
it,
share
John.
a poem my dad wrote for me and my sister Pearl. That's my dad. His name is Andy. He has Parkinson's disease,
Okay.
but we call it Parky. Daddy wrote this poem so Pearl and I could understand more about what it feels like to have Parkinson's. The poem is called Smaller. I will now read it for you. My world got smaller. My handwriting. My voice. My walk. My spirit. My balance. The space in the world I take up. It crept up on me in micro increments. Those are big words for small and slow. Until it arrived with a name. And then it became big and scary. And I didn't want it. But now I had a face, a reason for all the smallness. And so it became what it is. I may be smaller, slower,
but I'm still me.
Yes, you are, Daddy.
Yeah, that was smaller. Yeah, no, definitely. It's kind of crazy hearing my baby voice.
And what a legacy type of a project as well, in terms of the value that's just had an incredible ripple effect in the Parkinson's community, and will continue to be, because it's got such a message in it, right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Is there anything else that you had planned that you wanted to share at this time?
Not for me, pal.
I could just like touch on a little bit how even though Lily was kind of the main like director through Smaller because she was actually in the video, I definitely like found it just as beneficial, like especially hearing that it was my sister's voice as well. It made it easier for me to like, oh, okay, I can understand this and I will understand this, and it's super cool to like have something really familial connected as well. So I just found it super useful.
Great.
But yeah, all from me, I think.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, we're going to move on to Cece. And I tell you, WPC 2013 was a really big year for me, because it was there that I led actually a round table for people with Parkinson's who were parenting children, teens, young adults. And it was at that Congress that Cece's mom, Rebecca, landed in the WPC arena. She was a wonderful contributor to the booklet that I wrote about Parkinson's and parenting. And in doing that, I got to hear lots of stories about Cece and raising Cece, and now we get to hear Cece's version and her story. So welcome, Cece.
Hi, thank you. I'm Cece. I'm 12 years old. I live in the US, and my mom was diagnosed when I was just 8 months old. So, just like Lily and Pearl, this has been normal. It's my whole life. Just my mom's had Parkinson's. And like Elaine mentioned, my mom first went to the World Parkinson's Congress in 2013, and I went with her to Canada with my babysitter, but I didn't actually go there, but I've heard stories about it my whole life. And I've always heard about stories and my mom's friends and the Parkinson's world, and it was always very interesting. And I always found support in all the people around me because it's always just been me and my mom. So all of her friends have always been so nice, and knowing that my mom wasn't the only one with this and there were other people who were living like this, it was very helpful. And yeah.
So just to pick up on what you were saying, Cece, and the value for your mom in knowing other people with Parkinson's and living life with Parkinson's, and how to do that and what that can look like. I'm wondering if the same is the case for you, in terms of, is there value in connecting with other kids who either their parent has Parkinson's or another chronic health condition? Has that been something that's been a part of your experience?
I haven't met very many kids who have had Parkinson's, but I've heard about a lot of them, and I've heard of Pearl and Lily's dad and his presentation, and listening and hearing about that, it was very supportive, even if I didn't actually meet the kids in person or talk with them.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Okay, and over to Isaac. So, as you've heard, I was blessed with not only attending WPC 2013, but I've had the good fortune of going to 2016, 2019, and 2023. And with that was the good fortune of crossing paths with Isaac's mom, Sarah. And so how fortunate I feel now to be crossing paths with Isaac. So Isaac, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. So yeah, like you said, my name is Isaac. I'm speaking to you from Sweden. I'm 22 years old, a psychology student, and like you said, my mother has Parkinson's. So what seems to be, like I was also only a few months old when my mom was diagnosed, so I've never really known a life where my mom doesn't have Parkinson's. This means I've also had the title of honorary Parky bestowed upon me. But since I've always known about it, there wasn't really a single moment where I found out. I don't really remember learning about any details about Parkinson's since, I was learning about everything else in the world at the same time. And when you're a kid, it's a lot more interesting to find out that dinosaurs used to exist than why your mom is different from other moms. And, besides, all moms are different from each other in various ways. So I already knew why she was different because people are all different, and that's just how it is. In Sweden, there's a children's magazine that basically everyone reads at some point in their lives. There's articles about youth culture and interviews with children and things like that. So, you're just like a regular magazine, but for kids and tweens. I remember reading an article about children who had parents with disabilities and thinking, I wonder what that's like. Because it didn't even register for me that my mom was also disabled. The fact that she had medication alarms that went off sometimes and used a cane and needed help crossing the street was so normalized for me. That's just how certain parents are, I figured. I don't remember this myself, but once when I was around 6 years old, me and my mom were walking to daycare together. I suddenly asked her, Mom, is Parkinson's contagious? She figured I must have recently put together that since Parkinson's is called a disease, and since most diseases are contagious, then Parkinson's might be as well. She told me it wasn't, and we had a long talk where she explained what PD is like, that no one knows why some people get it and some people don't, and that clever people are all around the world are looking for a cure. I thought about all this for a long time, and then later, out of the blue, I told her, Mom, I'm so glad you got Parkinson's. My mom thought I'd lost my mind, but asked me in a neutral manner, Oh, why do you say that? Well, I said, because if you hadn't gotten Parkinson's, I wouldn't be friends with Annika. Annika was one of her PD buddies who I apparently liked a lot. So, in short, you could say I've always had a pretty relaxed relationship with Parkinson's. I wouldn't say that any of my mom's symptoms have been challenging for me specifically. I know that they can make her feel frustrated and limited at times, and I empathize with that, of course, but it's never been a problem for me that it takes longer to walk places, or that we need to take different routes to avoid crosswalks, or that we need to take breaks more often when doing things. That's just how it is. It's not a problem. If the store is closed when I want to buy something, that's fine. That's just how the world works. And if I need to leave the house earlier when walking somewhere with my mom, that's just how it is. I don't really pay it any mind. When sharing the diagnosis with friends and others, I've had some shocked reactions. Parkinson's is such a big and scary word for many people. It's never been something I've hidden, nor something I've gone out of my way to mention. It's come up naturally. For me, it's just a neutral fact about her. It's as interesting as the fact that her hair is red. Among some friends I've told, I've had very positive reactions, as their parents also have neurological disorders. So I have found it a little bit hard to relate to them since we seem to have had pretty different experiences. They've known their parents without their disabilities and have therefore been more involved in their parents' grief about their loss of function, which has affected them more than it has me. I've also had a few negative reactions from therapists and mental health professionals. They often emphasize the negative effects my mom's disease could have on me. Some of them don't believe me when I say that it hasn't really been a problem and refuse to let it go, even when I tell them I'm actually there to talk about something else instead. I understand why they're so inquisitive about it, considering the fact that many children are very affected by their parents' diseases, but I feel like some people see disabilities as much more of a tragedy than it has to be. Of course, it's an immensely hard thing to go through for many people, but it doesn't have to mean the end of the world, and it's entirely possible to live a happy and fulfilling life with a disability. I also wrote down some tips, but I feel like we're going to go into that later, so I think I can end it there and just, yeah, in conclusion, I've had Parkinson's in my life for, my entire life. And I found that my mom is just like any other parent. She just might need a little bit more help with something sometimes.
Mhm. Well said, Isaac. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just the I think the theme that I'm hearing is from all of you so far, and you've just really rounded it up, is just that, like, I think you said it is just how it is. And so, this and now everybody on our panel here today has really lived most of your life with Parkinson's. So as you said, Isaac, some of your friends, their parents received a neurological diagnosis later on in life, and so kind of having to deal with the grief and the shock and the adjustment to a diagnosis, where all of you have really kind of been born into this diagnosis, and that does definitely make a difference. But it is this idea that it is how it is, because again, from my clinical practice, it's again, that parents who are wanting to shield and protect and feel that that it is a bigger thing than it is to their children, that their children's perspective on it is a little bit different than the parents' perspective on it, and that sometimes can be the bigger problem, as opposed to the Parkinson's being a problem at all, if that makes any sense. Um, so maybe we'll just kind of get into, you touched on your experience with sharing it with friends. I just wanted to give our panelists a chance to, chime in terms of, have you shared, or what did that look like when you've shared the Parkinson's diagnosis with friends? What kind of reaction did you receive, or was it helpful or was it not helpful? And just feel free to unmute and jump in.
I can chime in. Yeah, I think pretty much every friend I've ever had has known that my mom has Parkinson's. Back in my school days, it was because it was actually, well, the way my parents kind of integrated us into the quote unquote, I don't know, Parkinson's lifestyle of like having this be a part of our lives after they told us, is they like encouraged us to like run fundraisers and stuff for like the different Parkinson's charities, get involved in like creating awareness. So I was like at my school in like their morning announcements thing, doing like Parkinson's, this is everything about the disease, this is how you can help. So yeah, everyone in that age 100% knew that my mom had Parkinson's. And yeah, my friends nowadays, absolutely. If it doesn't come up like through the stuff I do day to day, I will usually tell them like before they meet my parents, if they're like getting to meet my mom or something like that in some sort of situation. And I have a little bit of a weird take. I think people get weird about it. I think it can be an awkward thing. I have never had friends ask me questions or like be inquisitive or be curious. I think people are made not uncomfortable by like the fact of oh, like, oh, your parent has a disease, oh my gosh, that's so strange. Not that, but more of a, I'm not sure what to say, which is fair. I think everyone has to deal with like these things differently. The person with Parkinson's has to deal with it in their own way, come to terms with it. The family around that person has to come to terms with it, and people hearing about it they have to understand it in their own way. But I do think it can be a strange thing. Like my friends nowadays, I don't think it's like something that people openly like to talk about. It wasn't back in the day either. And yeah, that's fair. I think that's,
Yeah.
I don't think it's like a super open dialogue.
Lily, Pearl, Cece, do either of you want to jump in on the Friends bandwagon?
I can for a second. Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like people are kind of weird about it. It's less like it just feels like they just don't know what to say because it's an unfamiliar experience to them. They're not sure how to relate, or if maybe they'll say the wrong thing. I think that they're afraid of making me feel uncomfortable. But I have gotten to a stage in my life where I'm like so comfortable talking about it. I'm like, ask me, please. It's like acknowledging that I have grown up a little bit differently doesn't make it a big new scary thing. We know, we all know. And so I'm almost at a like point in my life where I just feel like anytime I can bring it up, I'm like, yeah, no, my dad's disabled. And just like say it really plainly, just see what people like react with. It kind of gives me a little bit of power back, being like, yeah, this is my life. This is super normal to me. It's gonna be normal to you. And I'm always very encouraging of my friends asking questions because I think that that is actually an element of support, is the people who are close to you actually knowing what's going on. But it's about them kind of being able to take that initiative. Pearl, I know that you've had a lot to say about this, so what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like what Lily's saying is 100% true. It definitely gives you power back just being able to like own it rather than like shy away from it. But I know being like younger, especially in my friend groups, they definitely don't understand or like I'm met with the reaction like, oh, like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm great. It's just all I've ever known. It's not a bad thing. It's just something we've like learned to live with. And honestly, it's just like made our lives more interesting, I'd say. But yeah, some of the reactions can be a little odd, but I've never let it like affect how I feel and like my relationship with my dad. Like he's never missed one of my netball games and I like him coming to things. Like I've definitely never felt the need to like shy away, even if my friends are a bit odd about it. Just like gives me more reason to own it and show them that there are other things in this world apart from like normality. But yeah.
Thank you.
I have also shared it with my friends and I've had like mixed reactions most of the time. They just like react by saying like they ask like a little questions about it, like asking like what it is, but they don't generally get weird about it, but they just it kind of is a quick conversation and they don't really continue the conversation. But I do feel good about sharing it with my friends. I like my friends knowing, and most of my friends have known. And like Isaac, I don't bring it up like to bring it up. It just comes out naturally. And when it comes out, it's just like something just that I say because it's my life and I'm just used to it. So it's just pretty normal.
Yeah, I think that normalizing is key, and some of the things that you've all kind of talked about too in terms of just like the advocacy and to some degree educating some of your friends in different ways, is again kind of does a lot for your friends as well because it's helping them to mature and recognize that life is good and fulfilling and fun and all of those things, even when a chronic condition is at play. And I think that those are good life lessons that you guys don't even know that you've been learning perhaps or just now recognizing that you've been learning it and have benefited from it. And with respect to your friends kind of being uncomfortable with the uncomfortable, there are loads of adults who are uncomfortable with the uncomfortable. So it sounds like your experiences on this level are very similar and probably representative of most kids who are living with Parkinson's in their life. Um, is there any tips that you have with regards, to share with other parents, other people with Parkinson's, in terms of how you would recommend that they should relate to their kids regarding the Parkinson's. We've heard a lot about kind of good communication and open communication. Anything you want to add to that or expand on that?
Well, I really agree with what Sarika said about like the open communication just being really good and like not shying away from it and not trying to hide it just because like as children, I mean we do notice. So there's not really any use in like trying to hide it because it's going to come out eventually. And just I feel like that's sort of the sort of open dialogue vibe is what I've had in my family, and I think I mean it's worked really well for us, and yeah.
And can I ask, just like, is it very spontaneous and natural open communication, or is it every Friday night at dinner we're talking about Parkinson's and then we close the door for the week, or is it once a month, or is it via text, or what does that look like for most of you?
Well, for me, it was just that I was always encouraged to like ask questions about it, and like when it's come up, we've talked about it, or like, um, if my mom has trouble with something, then we just talk about it in the moment. Just yeah, just treating it like any normal thing, I guess.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I agree with Isaac. It's definitely not something we have scheduled calls about. I agree with everything he said about like it's very naturally integrated into our lives. Like it's I'll mention it in any conversation with my mom. If I notice my mom and I think she's off, I'll be like, "Are you off? Like, can I grab your meds? Can I do this?" And she will always say no, but I'll ask anyways. And I do want to maybe make one point in terms of like tips for parents. It's very difficult to answer that question because I mean we're not parents. We've not been in that situation, and the journey that someone with the disease goes through is a lot more complicated than we can all understand, I think. So it's a little bit difficult to be like, you should do this. But in my opinion, the number one thing that can help facilitate that open dialogue with your kids is understanding that Parkinson's is, and being disabled or having a chronic illness is not a weakness. It's not a weakness to show it. It's not a weakness to talk about it. It's not a weakness to acknowledge it. And it's not a weakness to ask for help sometimes for it. Because the people who love you, like your children, the only thing they want to do is help. They never ever want to feel powerless in this situation, right? Just as maybe you might feel powerless sometimes. So I think that would be my tip is like less of an action and more of like, again, I know it's difficult to be like you with the chronic illness must reframe this in your mind because I can never speak to that. But I think that is the key to facilitating that open dialogue.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Very well said.
Yeah, I completely agree as well. I think that it again, like it is a journey that people go on, like with the disease themselves. And my dad has expressed to me, like he was a very active person when he was younger. Like he would always go skiing with the family or like just be constantly running around playing rugby. And he's expressed to me that like he kind of felt sad that he couldn't do some of those activities with my sister and I. But I just think that it's really important for the parents to know, like, sure, you might not be able to do some of those things, but my dad has shown up for my sister and I in every single other way that he can. And it isn't like this big burden that we feel. Like, this is just our lives, and you can find like your own strength. I completely agree with everything you said, Sarika. And also just only tip wise is like, I really appreciate kind of like a slightly casual tone in the household towards Parkinson's. Because I think when I tell my friends, it seems like it's this big, heavy thing. But I don't know, my sister and I kind of like to joke about it with dad. It just takes a lot of the weight out of it. Like we will look at him and we'll be like, dude, like you're not on your meds. Like, can you please like just like go sort that? And laugh about it together so that it's because it is just your life.
Yeah, I like fully agree. It's good to joke about it as well because I think it helps dad just be like, oh yeah, like it's just a thing. I don't want him to ever feel ashamed of it. But growing up, I used to like do little things with him, like we would sort his medication together. And that actually, it was like such a silly activity, but I used to ask so many questions. And it just like that, because he has so many. Like, I think everyone can relate to how many like drugs our parents are on. And it's just really interesting to know like what they actually do. But that was like a fun activity, I guess you could call it, that we did that like I think it's just all about including your children in little things to help them understand, like not shy away from it or keep anything a secret. And like as Lily said, our dad was a super active person, and he's also expressed to me that how he wishes he could like take us skiing. But when my dad, because he did the Machu Picchu like mountain thingy, I used to like go on walks with him to like prepare for it, and just like little inclusive things to like involve the family in his like own experience. It can also help him just feel a bit more supported. So I think that's my tip, is just include them, like include your children. They want to be a part of it, they want to know. It's not something to be ashamed of, and I think it benefits us like a lot. But yeah.
I think those are such wise words, you guys, because I guess what's happening at the same time for the person with Parkinson's is their own journey with themselves and adjusting to a diagnosis, adjusting to the changes in their life's expectations and that kind of thing. And what it sounds like is some of the things that you've all put in place within your own families have really helped your parent live life well with Parkinson's, because you're sorting pills together and you're going on walks together and you're waiting patiently when it takes a little longer to get out of the house, or you're offering to give to go and get medication even though she says no, but at least you're there, you're open to being supportive and in whatever way you can be. So that's great. Is there anything, or do any of you, if you're comfortable to talk about any kind of coping strategies that you use, though as you're presenting today, you all sound like you're doing well with this. And I think that's one of the other messages too, is that having Parkinson's disease doesn't mean that there's going to be problems in the house. It doesn't mean that there are going to be problems in the relationship. It doesn't mean that it's going to be a negative thing. Quite the opposite. We're hearing that there have been a lot of gifts. So I actually am now with two questions. One being, what have been the gifts? You've all kind of mentioned that in different pieces of your chatting today. Can you articulate what some of those gifts have been? Maybe a heavier one.
Can start then, if no one else wants to. I think for me, the most obvious one, I think probably the fact that the other panelists are here on this panel, they can probably relate to that, is just instilling from a very young age the fact that you have the ability to give back. I don't know if this is specifically because of Parkinson's, but I think it is, because I think the way that I was exposed to Parkinson's from a very young age, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning, was my parents getting very involved with like charity. And I remember that. And I remember them going to all these charity events and raising money and like doing these things before even I knew that my mom had Parkinson's. And so there, because I guess that was the way they integrated into their lives. I don't know, you could ask them, but that's how it was shown to me. The way that they wanted it integrated into our lives was, okay, this is something you're learning. What can we do? What can we do to give back? And so I think that aspect of like putting some level of, I don't know if the word is charity, but like maybe active response to things, first in your life, no matter how busy you are, no matter what you're up to, has been very instilled because of that. And I'm grateful. And I'm grateful for the opportunities and the people I've met, and the people I've been able to reach out to because of that.
How about for anybody else? Any other kind of positive silver linings, positive ways in which it's impacted you? Isaac?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, my mom's entire job is sort of centered around patient activism and stuff like that. And I think what she's doing is really cool, and it's really interesting and fun to hear about, and meet all these people she's gotten to know. I mean, I wouldn't like all of you guys, like I wouldn't be sitting here in this panel if it wasn't for Parkinson's, so that's pretty fun. And yeah, while while getting my psychology degree, it's also been really fun to, talk to her because she's gained a lot of knowledge about how the brain works through, learning about Parkinson's. So she's been a great study help, which is nice. Um, and yeah,
Okay.
basically that.
Cece, any silver linings?
I think that I agree with both of them. And I also think that like just getting to meet all the people um through my mom having Parkinson's and getting to meet all her friends. And I wanted to call out this one person because I found him very funny when I first met him at the um Parkinson's Congress in Barcelona, John Stamford. He was very funny and I just found him just very fun to talk with, and he also brought up Parkinson's like regularly and like calmly, and I just found him really fun, and all my mom's Parkinson's friends have been that way, and it's just so nice to get to meet all these great people through Parkinson's.
Oh, great.
Yeah, no, absolutely, completely tick, 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 agree with everything everyone said. It is just kind of like you are so immediately, as you enter the world, aware that you're not like the only person in it and that there's more than meets the eye. And just like my sense of empathy was just like spearlined immediately, which I think is a real gift. It's just like that whole like classic thing of you don't know what people have got going on because Parkinson's can sometimes exhibit as a slightly invisible disease. Like our dad was lucky enough to receive DBS. And so a lot of like, the shakes and all of those like symptoms kind of quietened down, but it's still very present. And I remember like lots of like friends when I was younger would think that he was drunk or like he has been picked up by the cops before because they're like, oh, this guy seems like he's acting a little bit weird. But so it just kind of like really, really reiterates to you like you just don't know what people are going through or what invisible things are lying in their lives. And I think that's really beautiful, personally.
Mhm.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Lily. Empathy wise, it's just so much more like heightened. I'm just so like aware of everyone else. I feel like we grew up so maturely and like it it was definitely we had to like make quite adjustments growing up in terms of just being so much more socially aware of different things. So our awareness was just always like, but it's just like it does just aid you like in your like path of life. I feel I'm just always more accepting and aware than other people, and just
Mhm.
grown up with so many like a wide variety of different experiences that no other kids usually get to like get. So no, yeah, I agree with everyone, but being mature is definitely a gift I think I've gotten.
Different lens through which you're seeing life than perhaps some of your, uh, your friends who don't have a chronic condition in their immediate life, right? It's a different perspective, and
Yeah,
one
definitely.
serve that's going to, and I think has served you all really well, just in terms of your personal growth and that sort of thing. And so I started to touch on this a few minutes ago, was around coping. Um, is there any strategies that any of you use to kind of, we heard a lot about support and talking to one another and family, friends, and things like that. Is there anything else in terms of a coping strategy that you use? Some people use mindfulness or meditation or exercise or journaling or anything that stands out for any of you. And maybe it's just the things that you're doing every day is all really working well. And that's these incredibly strong families and certainly the approach that your families have all taken to um, to manage the Parkinson's on an emotional level and on an intellectual level and on a physical level for sure. There was one question that came in from the audience. Do you all know how to help your parents with medications? And if so, how was learning about that? How was that? Are any of you involved in helping with meds?
I mean, yeah, I think probably a lot of us will say yes to this, because your parents not always gonna have meds on them. Sometimes you have to grab them. You need to know. I know in my family, we have like silly names for all the different medications. Like one of them looks like a hot dog, so we call it hot. My mom will be like, "I need hot dog," and we have another one that looks like a bun, so I need hot dog and bun, guys. So I don't know. It's. I definitely feel involved in that. It's not that difficult, I think, to get involved in that way, and accept help in that way sometimes.
Yeah. Anybody else? Cece?
Yeah, I also like I've grown up with like hearing my mom's timers go off and then I immediately knew that, oh, it's time for her meds. And then sometimes if she was feeling a bit tired or she just didn't feel like getting up, I could go and grab them for her. And it was just like nice to be involved in that and know I was helping her out and
Nice.
Yeah, I'd touch on it because since I used to help my dad like actually organize all of them, I would like open all the bottles for him because they're like quite small and fiddly. So I like being able to help him in that regard just like also taught me a lot about each one he takes. Like I know most of them and what they do. And that's where I learned all about like the dopamine levels and like how it all affected his brain and how they like the medication helps. So it gave me a proper like understanding and awareness of how the medication is actually helping him. So I guess that just like helps even when he like takes them and I'm just like, oh, I know what they're doing. And that's just like I think crucial in having a bit more understanding, especially when he's off from like, oh, it's because blah 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 blah. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I feel like I've had a lot of funny moments with dad where, we all know how parents can be like on and off, and it's very easy to tell. Where I'll like walk into his room and I'll like start chatting with him and he's just like straight muttering. And I'm just immediately like, oh, somebody's forgotten to take their pills. And so I've just like walked out of the room, grabbed them and like just been like, there you go on. Not in like a managing way, just in like a very light-hearted, this is how I can help because I can just notice sort of way. I feel like that's kind of where it mostly comes into my life.
Okay, thank you. I'm wondering if there's any messages that you would give. I mean, I think everything that you've been saying today is really helpful for other kids to hear who are maybe just hearing of a diagnosis in their family. But is there any kind of key takeaway that you would want to share with another child, teen, young adult who is now entering this world of Parkinson's? So kind of speaking to the kids.
I guess I would say, and this sounds obvious, but I guess when you're being faced with something as scary as a diagnosis, it can become less obvious. Your parent is your parent before they are a patient of Parkinson's, like always, first and foremost. It can be scary to be like, oh, what will my life be like down the line? But I think it's hard to predict that because it's such a personal journey and it's going to completely depend on your own personality, your own relationships. Um, so yeah, I don't think that someone should be scared of their life massively changing. Life changes in ways all the time. This is just one of those ways, and it's going to completely depend on your family and your situation to see how that goes, right? But yeah, they're your parent first and foremost.
I love that. Thanks, Erica. Anybody else have any words of advice to children or young adults who are now entering this journey?
I mean, I know that Pearl and I had talked about it's kind of always been very aware to us, just kind of like along the lines of what Sarika was saying, that it's your parents' first time being a parent too. And especially like with an illness in the family, I just like this whole empathy thing. I've got all the empathy in the world for my dad because I know that like I can see what's going on. It hasn't made my experience feel any lesser though. And so again, just any advice-wise, open dialogue. And if there are communities around you that you can reach out to, just the only thing I found super beneficial is having someone that has a similar experience to mine. Like my little sister or my best friend also has an unwell father in the family. It just makes you feel like I'm not alone. Like, oh, this is a normal for people other than myself. I find that really beneficial. So if that's accessible to you, absolutely reach out.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think that there have been well, certainly with the internet, that allows us to connect with people all over the world, as we're seeing today, that of people who might be in similar positions to yourself. So the world is now much more accessible, and people's experiences and connections. I once worked with a family, and their son was in their teens when she was diagnosed, and he used to do online gaming with somebody who I think was actually in Australia, if I'm not mistaken. And it was that connection where he was able to, share the hard things that are hard to share, say, with your classmate, but he was able to share with this person who lived across the pond so much more carefully. So it's just all about kind of finding the supports that you need, is kind of what I'm hearing. Any other advice for kids who are navigating this with their parents? How to live life, how to balance your
Yeah,
life.
yeah, I'd say my biggest thing was just like don't hold too much fear like to it. I remember when I was younger, I used to get a bit into my head, especially after my dad had DBS, the surgery. I was like, I'd always like kind of race ahead to the future and get a bit worried or fearful. But I literally would just walk out of my room and go and talk to him because there's like nothing better than just like being able to talk to the person you're like worrying about. And it just
Mm,
like reinforced like he is okay, like it's all gonna be okay. And if he's so like uplifting about it, because he was never like upset, he never took it negatively. He always wanted us to be like open and positive about it. And I was like, if he feels this so strongly this way, then I should too. And it just like lessened the worry so much. And like there isn't, you shouldn't hold too much fear against it. As everyone's saying, they are your parent before the disability first. And yeah, that's what I say.
we may have kind of touched on this one. This is another question from one of the audience participants, but just
Can I just add one thing
oh,
first? I just thought of something.
yeah, by all.
So I was thinking it's really easy to, when you see that someone you love is struggling, to just give it all. And I think that an important thing to remember is to also take care of yourself, because to be able to give, you sort of have to have something left to give. And I think that's something, I mean, it can be hard for, people who are caregivers or, sort of are trying to help their parents to prioritize themselves sometimes too, so that they don't burn out.
Really good point, Isaac. Thank you. Um, just as we're getting towards the end, this one final comment that came in, which again, I think we've touched on a little bit, but is there anything that you think your parent could have done differently in relation to you and the Parkinson's? Is there anything that would have been more helpful, or since you're still in it and your parents are all going to be watching this at some point? So it's kind of a hard question to ask, but I mean, I think we did hear a lot about the communication, which was so and has been so valuable in all of your families.
Yeah, I was gonna say that again. I've touched on it before and I will say it again. Like open communication is the key. There's nothing scarier than like the mystery of the monster under the bed that you don't understand, you don't know about, and you don't know what's going on, and you don't know how your parent is feeling, you don't know what the future looks like or what their worries are. And that's something like you said, we're still in it. I still struggle with that in my family to this day. My mom is the most amazing person on earth. She's the most selfless, giving person on earth. But that comes in, I think, bites her sometimes because it's hard for her to feel like, I think somebody else said this. I can't remember who. Somebody else mentioned that can be hard for a parent to like feel like they're not doing everything for their kid. And so like you might want to overcompensate, and that can lead to like anxiety around showing weakness. And I urge you to talk about it. I urge you to talk about it. I urge the kids who might be listening to poke at it. Don't stop. Keep asking, okay? Because it will only make it more normal in your family. It will only make it easier going on, and it will only make it easier for your parent to know that it's not something you're scared of, and it's not something that it's not the big mystery. It's not the monster in the closet. So yeah, I think it's the same point.
Yeah, I think that that's the case for many things, kind of things that are out out in the open and able to be talked about. It releases the fear and it releases the anxiety and it releases all of those kinds of otherwise worries. So a worry that is shared is shared, and that makes it easier to manage for sure. Well, in closing, you know what? I mean, I know from my work that, there's been very little researched on and written on the specific needs and coping strategies and concerns of children of people with Parkinson's who have Parkinson's, but we can certainly draw on the experiences of many families, such as the ones that we've heard from today, and also from other research about what helps children deal with a parent who has a chronic illness. I really want to say thank you to all of our panelists for your honesty and for your bravery in sharing your stories, and for the attitudes that you've all embraced, and a lot of that has come from above, right? That's come from your parents' amazing modeling of how to manage challenges in life. And I think in the course of this series, we've learned that children, regardless of age, generally want more information rather than less, maybe want more information early on about Parkinson's disease, want to know what to expect as the disease progresses, and want to know that despite the challenges, that you as an individual and you as a family can be okay. Might be different than expected, but nonetheless, some version of okay. So I think we've gained some really valuable insights, and we certainly hope that these will be helpful and useful now and in the future. Thank you all. It's just been a sheer delight to spend this time with you.